Tawala Kenya, Tawala. Tawala Kenya, Tawala. CRIMES I MOI, Tawala Kenya, Tawala.
Previously on the making of a klepto statesman. This is the story of the statesman who became a kleptocrat, a financial crimes biography of former President Moi and his associates, as documented by Kroll Associates UK. Lol, the realm of the Moi's fortune is staggering in vastness, an empire beyond quantification. Moi, a billionaire by plundering Kenya's wealth, is so prodigious that even Forbes has named his family as the richest Kenyans, second only to the Kenyattas. We shall reveal to great length all the faces that represent the jigsaw that forms the man and the wealth, Moi. According to the Kroll report that was leaked on WikiLeaks, we ask, 1. If Joshua Kulei transferred to the Mois what was approximately 80% of what he had held in trust for them and still remained a multi-billionaire, then how much did Joshua contribute to the Mois' fortune? What is the 80%? Second, according to Mr. Mark Biwott, Kroll's senior consultant for Africa, in an interview with the Business Daily, he disclosed that the Kroll report on the looting by Moi was only 25% of the work done. What would be the result if they had completed the report? The key people in Moi's circle were collectively able to loot billions of shillings. Some of that wealth was transformed into businesses. Some is held up in land and ranches. Most of it is offshore, untraceable, unretreatable, unquantifiable. In today's episode, we reveal another important piece of the jigsaw of the Moi's empire, Nicholas Biwott. But first, a brief history of the men and how they met. I am Jeph Kafka. Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi was born on 2nd September 1924 into the Tugen subgroup of the Kalenjin people in the Rift Valley. Nicholas Kipiatol Kipronol Arap Biwott was born on 22nd February 1940 in Chibayor, Keyo District, Rift Valley. In 1955, a 31-year-old Moi was transitioning from his role as a school teacher in Sachel to take up politics. He was elected a member of the Legislative Council. In 1955, 14-year-old boy Nicholas Biwott was joining Form 1 at Kapsabet Boys High School. In 1960, Moi founded the Kenya African Democratic Union, KADU, as a rival party to Kenyatta's Kenya African National Union, KANU. Yani, Moi was not always KANU. Following independence in 1963, Kenyatta, who became Prime Minister and later President of the new nation, convinced Moi to merge their two parties. So Moi used KADU as a bargaining chip to convince Kenyatta that he was bringing something to the table. In 1964, Moi was already a member of Kenyatta's cabinet as the Minister for Home Affairs. Meanwhile, 1964, Biwott was finding his footing in Australia in economics and political science, as well as a diploma in public administration. In 1967, Moi became the vice president. In 1968, Biwott completed his master's in Australia. He returned to Kenya where he would start life in the public service. First as personal assistant to Minister Bruce Mackenzie in the Ministry of Agriculture, and then as senior secretary under the Ministry of Finance and Economics under the former President Moi Kibaki. In 1972, Nicholas Biwott was transferred to the Ministry of Home Affairs to work with the Vice President and Minister for Home Affairs, Daniel Arap Moi. And that was the path that fate carved up for Moi and Biwott to finally meet up. In 1972, Moi was in his midlife, enjoying life as a 48-year-old second in command. Biwott was 32, exploring life in Nairobi and along the corridors of power. This was one of the hottest joints in Nairobi back in 72, and using imagination alone, it wouldn't have been impossible to find Nick here, with his hot Australian wife, on the VIP section, enjoying a cigar and a few drinks. Now, the two were not just colleagues in government, but tribe mates, friends, and now they were about to form an inner circle of bros. Moi was a sharp-looking man, not just a suit. Towering at 6'1", he was already physically superior to most of his peers. With an athletic body and already a teetotaler, one could say that Moi already showed glimpses of greatness. He had full hair, full lips, and a mustache carefully trimmed to underline his nose. His trademark gap on his lower teeth accessorized his beauty. During that time, one of Moi's roles in the Ministry of Home Affairs was to ensure humane conditions in jails as well as the welfare of the prison wardens. This meant that he received a lot of reports from the prison officials, and one of the wardens was a Kalenjin man who spoke Moi's dialect. He was a Togen named Joshua Kulei Chemusian. Moi, the Vice President, Biwott, his assistant at the Ministry of Home Affairs, and Joshua Kulei, the prison warder from Togen. How could this bromance work, you ask? No, it was not a bromance between the three, but a bromance between Moi and Biwott, and another between Moi and Joshua Kulei. But it cannot be denied that the three formed a triumvirate of modern-day klepto statesmen. Joshua Kulei was asked to resign from his post as a prison warder to become Moi's personal assistant, a role he gladly accepted. And to show the level of trust that Moi had in Joshua Kulei, British historian Charles Hornsby, in his 2013 book, Kenya, A History Since Independence, notes that by 1997, the Kulei was a director of dozens of companies: CMC Holdings, Bamburi Cement, CFC Bank, NAS Airport Services, Heritage Insurance, American Life Insurance Company, Mitchell Courts, and so many others. Kulei was to Moi what Bonnie was to Clyde. Biwott was to Moi what Cleopatra was to Mark Antony. If you're keen on history, you'd know how much weight that kind of pairing holds. Moi had a wife, and the mother of his 8 children, Lena. But she never made it to being the First Lady of Kenya. Moi would divorce her in 1974. He'll never remarry. But smoothly, he executed the role of the biggest office on the land for the next 24 years. Well, even have a romantic affair with a Swiss woman, as later chronicles would claim. And that was the genius of Moi. He got a trusted, loyal, no question asking, no secret telling tribesman, kinsman, Atugen to handle not just his cabinet minutes, but also his domestic affairs. His bromance, Joshua Kule. While Biwott would be the second among equals, he would wield influence unprecedented, wealth unquantifiable, and power uncontestable. He is another face we unmask in this web that would transcend for at least 3 decades. Yet, Biwott's life and intricate schemes ascend to a realm beyond even our comprehension. He did not dwell in the obscure depths of Moi's shadow like Joshua Kule. Instead, he emerged as a forged titan, a complete embodiment of a man, a total man, and a man whose life we shall discuss in his own episode. No doubt, Biwott's influence will be felt throughout his lifetime and that of Moi. History will always record Moi as the second president of Kenya and the longest serving president in Kenyan history. But what history will not tell you is that Moi almost never became the president. It is therefore a correct adjective to infer that Moi was both prepared and lucky. But how did a young Tugen teacher's fortune change from a humble beginning to the head of state? Now, this is where Moi gets lucky. According to Gigi Kariuki in his book Illusions of Power,
page 74, I'll quote, "Such statements did not deter those determined to ensure that their choice succeeded Kenyatta. A special unit in the guise of anti-stock theft operation was set up within the police force to ostensibly eradicate cattle rustling in the country, especially in the Rift Valley. This unit came to be nicknamed the Ngoroko Squad and was organized along paramilitary lines. Kenyans were later surprised to hear that this squad was to be instrumental in seizing power by force if necessary in the initial stages following Kenyatta's death. The alleged plan was that if Kenyatta died in Nakuru, the vice president and those known to be close to him would be summoned to Nakuru State House, where they would be eliminated. The story would be that they had been expediently killed after murdering Kenyatta. Kenyatta died not in Nakuru, but in Mombasa on August 22, 1978. Although an attempt was made to lend credence to this plan through some publications during the early days of Moi's accession to power, no investigation was ever initiated to determine the authenticity of these otherwise dangerous rumors. Neither was the force disbanded. Going by this alleged plan, the Coast Provincial Commissioner Eliud Mahihu may have saved Kenya from imminent chaos. Upon learning about the death of Kenyatta, within minutes, Mahihu informed Geoffrey Kareithi, the head of civil service, James Kanyotu, director of intelligence, and Vice President Moi at his farm in Rongai near Nakuru. Kareithi and Kanyotu advised Moi to go to Nairobi. According to unconfirmed reports, a well-selected contingent of the Ngoroko Squad had in fact laid a roadblock between Nakuru and Rongai. Had Mahihu, Kareithi, and Kanyotu delayed informing Moi, possibly the course of Kenyan history would have been altered dramatically.
He was tested once on 1st of August 1982 when the Air Force attempted a coup d'etat. According to historians, It was a plot by the Kikuyu and Luo leaders who were getting increasingly incensed by his leadership. The coup was thwarted by officers from the Kamba tribe.
Nataka niseme kwamba yale yaliyotokea leo asubuhi kwa muda mfupi iliyoletea wananchi wasiwasi mwingi sasa imeangamizwa na jeshi letu la nchi kavu na polisi, na nawashukuru wao sana.
A declassified memo by the CIA notes that the onslaught of Kikuyus and Luos by Moi had started. He banned Kema, the Gikuyu Embu Association welfare. He banned Odinga Senior from participating in political activities, and other dictatorial measures started appearing. He detained politicians that he felt were a threat to his peace and dictated election outcomes. One case in particular, after he detained the MP for Nakuru North, now Subukia, in 1982, Koigi Wamwere, the seat fell vacant. You would expect that since the area is predominantly Kikuyu inhabited, that a Kikuyu MP would win the resulting by-election. Not in Moi's watch. Kikuyu voters were turned away and intimidated with violence, and Moi made sure that his man was elected, one Francis Koima Arap Kimosop. In his book, The Rogue Ambassador, by the then USA ambassador to Kenya, Smith Hempstone, Smith illustrates the blatant abuse of power, corruption, and disregard for the rule of law. Along the way in his book, he provides insightful portraits of Kenya's political class, both crafty insiders and the tragically divided dissidents. By then, Kenya was facing increasing pressure from the IMF and the Western world to change policies like the one-party rule, all the rampant corruption that had depleted the nation's coffers, respect for human rights due to the high cases of detention without trial, and political assassinations. But Moi would show his dictatorship colors. Through Amendment Act No. 7 of 1982, which introduced Section 2A transforming the country into a de jure one-party state, Kenya's parliament, on Moi's order, reinstated the detention laws which had been suspended in 1978. Colonial-era laws were also introduced, like the Chiefs Authority Act, the Public Order Act, the Preservation of Public Security Act, and the penal codes that gave the president the right to suspend individual rights that were guaranteed by the Constitution. As a result, foreign aid was suspended. Kenyan coffee lost its market, and throughout the 80s, Kenyans were badly off. In February 1990, a delegation led by the former Foreign Affairs Minister, the flamboyant and intelligent Robert Ouko, flew to the USA in an attempt to woo President Bush to resume foreign aid to Kenya. He was in the company of President Moi, Nicholas Biwott, and some 80 other officials. It was deemed as a private prayer meeting between President Moi and President Bush. However, what transpired after that meeting would lead to one of the darkest memories in Moi's reign. This is elaborated further in Biwott's episode. A few days later, after the delegation returned home, Ouko would be found murdered at his Koru farm in Kisumu.
I am glad to inform Kenyans that I have today assented to the bill.
A multi-party state would be introduced in 1992 to comply with the IMF demands. The first multi-party general elections were held that year, and Moi, using both hook and crook, won the elections. He would do so again in 1997. By then, he had already written a chapter in the book, The Playbook of World Dictators. Any tyrant who comes after Moi will have more than enough nuggets to refer to. To start with, all money had his face. Not this face, but this well-chiseled, almost photoshopped bust of a handsome statesman. Then, he had all new bulletins start with him.
Hii ni taarifa ya habari mkisomewa na Hamisi Temo. Kwanza ni muktasari. Rais Daniel Arap Moi leo katika ikulu ya Nairobi alitoa mchango wake binafsi wa shilingi $500,000
and his picture would linger on the TV screen for what seemed like an eternity. Moi knew how to engross himself in the brains of the dissidents. He also had a style, a strong style that was almost ritualistic. He knew how to pose for pictures. You'd never catch him in a bad photo. Then there was the rungu. Whether ceremonial or just a bad habit he picked, but he never went anywhere without the rungu. Fimbo ya nyayo.
Fimbo ya nyayo yatuongoza kwenda wapi?
And his name? All the generations born in the 70s, 80s and 90s knew Moi. Some, even most, thought his real name was Mtukufu Rais Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi. Mtukufu Rais was stuck in everyone's mind as his name. Also Nyayo. Children knew him as Nyayo because of Maziwa ya Nyayo. But this name thing had also gotten into his head. In some of his companies, the directors was listed as Hedam, H-E-D-A-M, initials for His Excellency Daniel Arap Moi. And then he named everything after himself. Start with the Nyayo philosophy that children recited at schools. The Nyayo monument at Horupa, the Nyayo buses, if you remember them, the Nyayo gardens, Nyayo T-zones, Nyayo Stadium, Nyayo Pioneer, Nyayo this, Nyayo that. Then the Mois. Schools, universities, streets, roads, places, hospitals, and this. And as if that was not enough, a whole day was named after him. Moi Day. Moi only vacated office in his own terms. In 2002, after 24 years as president, and with over 50 years in power. In the next and last part of this 3-part series, we shall look at more faces that helped Moi to plunder family, friends, and associates. And for the next few minutes, as you go through the list of companies and properties that the Mois own, ponder and think how far in development this country would be in if these atrocities were not committed. How I wish it was all but fiction and tales that never shaped our future. But I will still uncover more for you, and I will be constantly yours, Jeph Kafka.